So in this video, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to show you how to use and set up a black box AG2. Black box represents a very legendary unit you can hear across many records. I use it as my analog unit here. However, for the purpose of this tutorial and easy explanation, I'm going to use a plugin version so you can understand and you can use this on your own. This unit is a legendary saturator and it does all the magic. It can make your masters much louder and much more full of character. Let's jump into the video. So as I was saying, the point of this video is showing you how this specific unit works. So it's a saturator that features two tubes. So you have the penton and you have the triad. The penton stands for second order harmonics and the triad will introduce the third order harmonics, which means that the penton will sound naturally a bit more pleasant and it will make your master sound a bit more warmer, while the triad knob sounds a bit grittier and a bit full of that texture and that like aggression, which is not really something I push very hard at the mastering stage. I tend to push the penton a bit harder, but let's go step by step. So the first control I'm tweaking is the saturation knob right here. So I'm turning this to N and I'm making sure I tweak this to my personal taste while also tweaking this calibration. So now, depending on how I want my master to sound, do I want it to be a bit darker, do I want this kind of a balanced vibe, or do I want to make sure it's brighter in terms of hi-hats, hats and everything? This is how I determine what kind of calibration I want within this unit. For this specific track, I'm going with the bright one. However, let me demonstrate you what each calibration mode does to the audio. So the very next feature I'm tweaking, besides the tubes, is this saturation frequency selector. This basically determines if I want to, for example, focus the saturation more towards the low end, towards the high end, or do I want this saturation to be spread out evenly through the master. Usually, I go with the flat mode. However, when I'm working with some bass heavy music or maybe some music that really has that accent to the vocals or something, I would maybe go then for this high saturation frequency. In this case and for this track, I'm going with the flat mode, which means again that I'm spreading out the saturation evenly. So once we get that out of our way, focus more on the penton and the triad knobs. Setting this up is quite easy for me personally, since I use this unit countless times within the plugin or within my analog that I have right here. Again, it's super simple, and the only way to get this right is to focus on precise hearing. Now I will mute myself and I'll show you different setups you can do with this so you can actually hear what's happening. Let's do that right now. I showcased multiple applications, in one case going very soft, in other cases going very hard, so you can actually notice the differences. The setup you see here is the usual one I find for masters, of course not to the same values, but this is usually what I do when it comes to matching. I don't want to trigger a lot of the saturation and to get all the noise and those kind of artifacts to the master. I want to go very soft, but again very effective. So once we have that covered, we can move on to this air amount. This is the function I don't use quite often, since I like doing this with another processor. However, this is a very cool feature. If you don't have, for example, some additive equalizers, some analog equalizers or something, you can use this specific feature, which sounds absolutely insane. It can really bring that excitement to the top of the mix, just does wonders. So now let's tweak this to taste. So while we are talking about Black Box AG2, I want to quickly remind you that you can also achieve saturation using FABFILTER SATURN 2. And to make things much easier for you, we created a SATURN 2 pack that sounds absolutely amazing. We have over 100 presets for almost every single group of instruments and also for mastering. All the presets are insane, especially the mastering one. Make sure to get this pack, and I'm definitely looking forward to your feedback on it. Now let's get back to the video. And last but not least, a very important step, which is this density knob and this mix knob. On the original unit, you don't have this function, so you can't make the signal denser in doing this, or to basically blend the signals. You would have to have basically 2 units and then do the manipulations in terms of routing. However, we can do that within this plugin. So now I'm going to showcase what this does. Using this specific density knob right here, we can make the signal a bit, as the name says, denser, which basically makes the signal a bit louder without changing the peak value at all. We already did that using saturation, but this is like the step further. And using this mix knob, I personally tend to set it to about 90% or maybe a bit less, since I want to retain the 10% of the dry transients, which really blends well with the wet signal. This way we can achieve a very natural sounding saturation using this unit, so our mixes and masters don't sound really robotic. This is the art of mastering. So now let's do that from scratch and give you a full preview before Blackbox and after Blackbox. This concludes today's video. Hopefully you now know how to use Blackbox Analog Design AG2, and you'll be able to achieve a very full sounding masters using this unit as I can. If you're able, listen to me and get the analog unit, but make sure you route correctly and that you have great converters. This unit does all the magic for masters, and it's much easier to achieve louder masters later. While clipping or limiting or maximizing or doing other processing, this unit is the key. And I personally, since I know this will be a question, I usually use this specific unit as the first insert in my chain. Usually, not always. So hopefully this video was helpful. See you in another one.